Hey everyone, welcome back again to the reactjs beginner course. So in this video we'll be exploring about the React hooks. So we'll be starting with the first hook that is called as a useState hook. So if you find this interesting, let's get started right
So let's
away.
understand about the useState hook inside React. So think of useState as a correct way of declaring variables inside of a React application. So pretty much the useState hook allows you to have a state variables inside of the functional components. So you can store anything inside of a useState hook. Let's say for example an array, an object, a number or a string or a single value. So let's understand useState with the help of an correct example. Okay, so the example I'm taking over here is a counter example. So let's understand what is a counter. So basic counter has an initial value, and towards the left, let's say we have a minus button, and towards the right we have a plus button. So if you press on the plus button, the value of the counter should be increased by 1, and if you press on the minus button, the value of the counter should be decreased by 1. So let's understand that and let's implement it in today's video. Okay, so firstly let us understand the syntax of useState, how to write that. So over here, let's pretty much remove that. So let's write const, open up the array. So the first thing inside of a use state is the initial state or the value. Okay, that's, let's say the value is count. And the second thing inside of a use state is the function or the modifier, or it also can be called as the setter. Okay, because it modifies this value. Okay, so the way we write that is set of the count that we initialized over here. Okay, equals to, let's initialize our use state, import it from React. And as I said, we are going to provide the initial value of 0 because at the initial stage the value of the counter is going to be 0. Okay, so save the file once. Yeah, so let's understand again the use state syntax. So the first value over here is called as the initial value or the initial state, and the second one is pretty much called as the setter, the basically the function that is used to modify this value, that is count. Okay, so let's say we console.log our value, that is count. So you should pretty much get the value of 0 because initial state is set to be 0. So let's give that a try. So save the file once and then let's go to our web page. Okay, and then let's inspect it, go to the console. Yeah, so let's clear the console once. Let's refresh the app. Yeah, so as you can see, we are getting the initial state as 0. Okay, all right, so now let's come back to our code, and then let us pretty much comment the header out, even the body as well as the footer. Okay, so save the file. So over here, let us initialize a div, and first thing we're going to initialize a button, and we're going to have the minus sign, and let's say take a h2 tag, and then over here we're going to access the count variable that is present over here, that is this one. Okay, so next thing again, we have a button that's going to have the plus sign. Okay, so let's save the file. So now if I save the file, we should have the count variable inside our web page that is initially set to 0. So let's go check that out. Yeah, so as you can see, we have the minus button, the plus button, and the initial value of 0. So now if I press on the plus button, nothing is going to happen because we have not added an on click event for that. So let's go do that now. So over here, let's write on click. Okay, so over here, let's write a function name that is decrement. So we are going to define this function at the top over here. Okay, so again on click, so this is going to be increment, and yeah, so let us define our functions right at the top over here, and let's remove the console.log, that's not required. So const decrement, let's write an arrow function. Okay, so let's similarly define our increment. Yeah, okay, so let's think how can we implement this. Okay, so what we have to do is, if I press on the plus button, the count value should be 1 inside the web page. Okay, so as I already told you, this set count is pretty much called as a function, or it is the modifier. Okay, or it's also called as a setter. So let us take that over here inside our decrement function. Let's write set count. We are going to access the count value that is present at here, that is this one, and we are going to say -1. Okay, so we are pretty much accessing the count value at that particular time, whatever the count value at that time is, and then we are decrementing it by 1. Okay, So that's the way you do it for decrement, and for increment it's just going to be the opposite. So set count of count, it's going to be +1. Okay, so this is the way you write the functions for our decrement and increment. So let's give this a try. Okay, let's go back to the web page. And yeah, so as you can see, we have the initial value set to be 0. So now let's say I press on the plus button, it should be increased by 1, right? So let's give that a try. Yeah, so it's increasing by 1. So what is happening is, so we have an on click event on the increment function, on the increment button, that is this plus button. So over here we are defining the function by making use of the arrow function over here, and we are accessing the set count, and we are grabbing the count value at that time. So initially it was 0, and we are just adding 1. Okay, so set count of 1. So over here the value becomes 1, and then we are accessing our count variable over here at the bottom, okay, in the h2 tag. So the value pretty much becomes 1, and the web page is again refreshed. Okay, so the web page refreshes whenever the count variable gets changed or manipulated. Okay, so that's the reason we're getting the value of 1. So let's again give it a try. So let's say if I again press on the plus button, it's going to get the state of 1, and we're going to add it by 1. Okay, so it's going to be 2, and again similarly we can increase it by 1. So let's say we press on the minus button. So the current value it's holding is 8. So let's say I press again, so it's going to be 7. Okay, so similarly in the decrement function over here, the count variable is set to 8, and we're going to say 8 minus 1, so it's going to be 7. So over here the 7 comes up, and we're again accessing the count variable, which is over here in the h2 tag. So pretty much we're getting the value of 7 over there. Again, let's press again minus, it's going into the negative as well. Okay, yeah, so we are able to build a counter app by making use of the useState hook. Okay, by defining our increment function as well as decrement function. So one thing to notice about the useState is that the data is not persistent. Okay, so let's give that a try. So currently it is set to 5. Okay, let's say I refresh the app now, it is again 0. So pretty much the data is not persistent. So there are many ways of making the data persistent, let's say by making use of the local storage or by making use of a database as well. Okay, so that's it about the counter application. So one more thing, why not try it this way, right? Instead of using set count, let's write count plus equals to 1. I mean count plus count minus equals to 1. We can try this as well, right? But it's not going to work because we should define it the correct way. Over here, let's write count plus equals to 1. Then save the file. And now let's try incrementing a counter. So initially it's set to 0. Let's say I press on the plus button, it's not going to get increased. Okay, why? Because we should do it the correct way, that is the React way, by making use of a state, that is the function, and then we should get the count value at that particular time and then increment or decrement based on the function we have. Okay, so let us write it the correct way. Yeah, so save the file. Yeah, so now we can increase and decrease. Yeah, so pretty much we have explored about the useState hook, and let's see you in the next video, and then thank you for watching.